Now with all the latest stories making the headlines this evening, it's the ITV News at 10.
Prince Harry tells ITV he wants to heal the rift in the royal family, but says there's no sign of a breakthrough.
Showing absolutely no willingness to reconcile. I would like to get my father back. I would like to have my brother back.
So what will it take to restore royal relations as we enter the King's coronation year? Also tonight, an emergency in the NHS. Senior doctors issue a fresh warning about the potentially fatal delays leaving patients' families in desperate situations.
Someone needs to fix it, and they're trying so hard, but they haven't got the resources.
Thousands of Brazilians queue for their chance to say goodbye to Pelé, a national hero who became a global icon. Brentford do it again, delivering a blow to Liverpool's hopes of a top 4 finish. And the latest stop of Thor's tour of the UK's coast sees the walrus savouring the sunset in Blythe.
This is ITV News with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. Prince Harry has told ITV that he wants his father and brother back, saying he wants to be part of a family, not an institution. But in a trailer for an interview which airs on Sunday, the Prince says senior royals have shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile after the Duke and Duchess of Sussex aired their grievances in a Netflix documentary series. The palace will be bracing itself for more revelations when his memoir, Spare, is published next week, as the King's coronation year begins with no apparent prospect of healing the royal rift. Our royal editor, Chris Shipp, reports.
When William and Harry and their wives appeared together in September following the death of the Queen, many suspected it was not the start of a reconciliation for the brothers, rather a forced show of unity. And now Harry has confirmed that relations between him and the royal family are as bad as they ever were.
I would like to get my father back. I would like to have my brother back.
The clips from next weekend's ITV interview are very short, just 20 seconds in total, but enough time for Harry to claim that his family, in his opinion at least, are not willing to find a way through.
They've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile. They feel as though it's better to keep us somehow as the villains.
Harry's interview will be broadcast just 2 days before his book Spare is published, memoirs which are expected to contain a potentially explosive set of claims about his family.
I want a family, not an institution.
Harry has done one other interview. It is for the American network CBS. In a clip released by them today, he once again accuses his family of leaking negative stories about him and Meghan.
Every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakings and planting of stories against me and my wife. When we're being told for the last 6 years, we can't put a statement out to protect you, but you do it for other members of the family, there becomes a point when silence is betrayal.
Just as Buckingham Palace didn't respond after 6 hours of Harry and Meghan's Netflix series, nor have they responded today to this very short clip from ITV. The palace knew the start of 2023 would be dominated by some potentially difficult questions in Harry's book, but now they have 2 interviews to contend with on either side of the Atlantic.
Here we see Harry reaching out emotionally, suggesting that he wants his father and his brother back. So on that level, perhaps a scope for reconciliation, but no contrition on his part. And all of this now builds towards, the prospect of the gathering of the family, of the firm at the coronation in May. So this couldn't have come at a worse time.
We have, of course, already heard from Harry and Meghan in that Oprah Winfrey interview and throughout their 6-part Netflix series. But this new programme appears to be the first time that the Duke of Sussex has allowed his claims to be properly challenged.
It never needed to be this way.
Nor, many might say, did Harry need to give another interview. But he has. Chris Shipp, ITV News.
Senior doctors have described fatal delays in emergency care as a national scandal, with pressure continuing to mount on the NHS. The Royal College of Emergency Medicine says 500 people are dying each week as a result of overcrowded A&E departments. The chair of the British Medical Association has called on the government to take immediate action. Martin Stew reports.
This is my mum.
John Martin's 87-year-old mum has dementia and chronic breathing problems.
She's certainly nowhere near ready to come home.
On Boxing Day, she had to wait for 5 hours in an ambulance, one of 15 queuing outside an overflowing and overworked A&E.
I swear a third world country would be better prepared than this. I heard the nurses say, well, we're going to have to prioritise who has the oxygen and who doesn't. So does that mean who lives or dies?
The Royal College of Emergency Medicine says emergency care across the country is in a complete state of crisis, with up to 500 people a week dying due to delays.
It's unquestionably a matter of life and death. We cannot provide safe and effective care in corridors or in car parks in overcrowded emergency departments. It really is a national scandal, the number of patients who are coming to harm at the moment.
The government says easing pressure on A&Es is a top priority. They've invested $500 million to free up bed capacity, but NHS bosses admit that's unlikely to help in time for this winter.
We've got around 9,500 people who've got COVID. We've got about 3,750 people who have flu. We've got 12,000 people who are medically fit to discharge, but because of the pressures in social care, we can't discharge them. But as ever, NHS staff are working incredibly hard to ensure that we provide the best possible care.
Back in Devon, John is visiting every lunchtime, worried staff are too busy to feed his mum.
Someone needs to fix it.
He doesn't blame the staff, but the system.
They're trying so hard to make it work, but they haven't got the resources.
With more strikes planned by nurses and ambulance workers this month, winter pressures show little sign of easing yet. Martin Stew, ITV News.
2 Britons are among 4 people killed when 2 helicopters collided on Australia's Gold Coast. The crash happened near the SeaWorld theme park, and beachgoers rushed to give first aid to survivors. The people who died were all travelling in the same helicopter. The Foreign Office say they are supporting their families. Brazilian fans are saying their final farewells to Pelé as his open casket lies in state on the pitch of his former football club. At the wake, FIFA's president told ITV News he will ask every country in the world to name a stadium in Pelé's honour. Tomorrow, the coffin will be carried through the streets to the home of his 100-year-old mother before a private funeral, as Steve Scott reports.
In the darkness, Pelé's hearse illuminated. Fireworks to celebrate a great life and to mark his homecoming. From first light they came, thousands upon thousands, queuing quietly under a scorching Santos sun. However long their wait, and it stretched to many hours, this was no chore but an honour. Just to be here was to be part of his extraordinary story. Locals old enough to remember when Pelé actually played here, taking it all in.
What does he mean to Santos and to Brazil?
I think for Santos everything, you know, for the city and for the Brazilian football and for our country. Pelé was the first Brazilian to be known worldwide, you know.
He was one of the greatest football players, and to honor his death.
Pelé's widow and the rest of his family led the mourners today. The most powerful man in football told me about an ambitious plan in Pelé's memory.
We will ask as well every country in the world to name one of their stadiums, one of their football fields, with the name of Pelé everywhere in the world, in every country of the world. Because it's important that children in 20 years, in 50 years, in 100 years from now, they remember who Pelé was.
Inside, alone with their thoughts, almost within touching distance of a man in Brazil they call the king.
They will keep passing by through the night until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then Pelé's coffin will be driven through the streets of Santos for the final time, ahead of a private family funeral.
Candela and Mateus took 10 hours to get here and queued for another 4, but will never forget the precious seconds with a man they'd previously only admired from a distance.
Never had seen him, never seen him play, never seen him in person. That was the first time.
You're very emotional.
It's very difficult.
Pelé's final resting place is a 14-storey high cemetery just a stone's throw from the stadium, and from tomorrow, a Brazilian landmark with an even greater significance. Steve Scott, ITV News, Santos.
In Rome, mourners have also been gathering to see former Pope Benedict XVI as his body lies in state at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. The former Pope became the first in 600 years to resign as head of the Catholic Church when he stepped down in 2013. Rachel Younger reports.
As a grey dawn breaks over the Vatican, the queuing begins. And throughout the day, and despite the damp, there's no end to it. Thousands snaking across St. Peter's Square, the famous piazza named after the very first pope, for a final moment with the 265th to serve here. Inside the basilica, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI now lies in state within an open casket. Psalms are sung for him in Latin before Italy's president and prime minister pause to pay their respects. After the dignitaries, the devoted, the committed and the curious coming to say their goodbyes to a man who died aged 95 on New Year's Eve. Some offering up a prayer for his soul, others immortalising the moment with a camera phone, perhaps to share it with those who can't come themselves, to mourn a pope whose fiercely conservative views inspired both concern and devotion.
I would say that it was this. He was not afraid to face the questions of today. He was very open in that regard.
It's a beautiful experience, but also it's humbling for me, as a priest, to get to have this experience in Rome.
The doors of St. Peter's will remain open to mourners for 2 more days, before Benedict's successor, Pope Francis, presides over his funeral on Thursday. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
Tennis legend Martina Navratilova has been diagnosed with 2 forms of cancer. The 66-year-old has confirmed she has throat and breast cancer. Both diseases are said to be in their early stages with a good chance of recovery. Rail commuters are being warned to only travel if absolutely necessary ahead of 5 consecutive days of what could prove to be the most disruptive strikes yet. Workers for the RMT are staging walkouts tomorrow, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, while ASLEF workers are striking on Thursday. In the Premier League, Liverpool's start to the new year did not go according to plan. Needing a victory to close on the top 4, they were well beaten by Brentford. Chris Scudder was watching. And finally, this evening, the walrus, seemingly on a tour of the UK's coastal hotspots, has chosen a yacht club in Blyth for his next destination. Nicknamed Thor, he was in Scarborough just before the new year. The town cancelled its firework display over concerns for the animal, but 2 days on, Thor has been taking in the sunset on a pontoon 100 miles further north. Although he's drawing crowds, everyone seems to be heeding advice to allow him a well-earned rest in peace. And that's it for this evening. From me and the rest of the team, goodbye.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello again, a very good evening to you and a very happy new year. I hope 2023 has started off very well for you so far. Certainly lots of sunshine around through today, and that has translated into some clear and rather chilly conditions overnight, particularly across those central and eastern parts. But we do have that change of tack moving in from the west in the form of this rain-bearing Atlantic frontal system. Brings in some patchy rain, of course, but also something less chilly. As we look ahead to tomorrow, that system continues to move from west to east across the UK. Rather wintry there across the higher ground. A brief, slightly drier period before the next great whack of rain starts moving in from the west. And really, this is how it's going to look for the rest of the week, with bands of rain moving in from the west.